Ladies and gentlemen, there comes a moment in life when you realize that everything you have been searching for has been quietly sitting right where you are. But for years, maybe even decades, we keep running, chasing, and believing that fulfillment lies somewhere beyond the horizon, in some future moment, in some achievement, in some recognition, or in some person who will finally make us feel complete. And in that endless pursuit, we forget the most obvious truth of all, that the very act of searching is what blinds us from seeing what we already hold. Think about how often we say to ourselves, when I get that job, I'll finally feel secure. When I find the right partner, I'll finally feel loved. When I reach that goal, I'll finally be enough. But the moment we arrive at those places, what happens? A strange emptiness appears, like an echo in the room of our soul. We tell ourselves it wasn't quite it, that maybe the next thing will be the answer. So we chase again, and then again. Life becomes an endless scavenger hunt for happiness, with no treasure to be found, because we never pause to question the game itself. Alan Watts often said that the search for meaning is like trying to bite your own teeth. You keep attempting to grasp something that was never outside of you in the first place. You are the one searching, you are the one longing, and you are the one who already holds the very experience of life that you believe you must attain. Isn't it strange that we rarely consider that maybe the search is the illusion? That maybe the peace we crave doesn't arrive with the next success, but emerges the very instant we stop running from where we already stand. Let me tell you a story. Imagine a man walking through a forest, frantically searching for water because he believes he's dying of thirst. His eyes scan the trees. His heart races. He panics with every step. And yet, on his back, he carries a container full of fresh, clear water. He doesn't realize it's there. He suffers not because the water is absent, but because he never turns inward to notice that he already possesses what he seeks. This is how so many of us live, desperate for love while carrying an ocean of it inside, desperate for peace while ignoring the stillness that exists in every breath, desperate for freedom while clinging to the chains we forged ourselves. What makes this truth so hard to face is that it removes the excuses we cling to. Because if our search is already over, then it's no longer about what life needs to give us, but about what we need to recognize in ourselves. That can feel terrifying. We can't blame the job, the relationship, or the circumstances anymore. The responsibility shifts inward, and that's uncomfortable. It's easier to believe that happiness is just one step away than to face the silence of realizing we've had it all along and simply didn't see it. But pause for a moment right now. Feel the weight of your body where you are sitting or standing. Notice the rhythm of your breathing. Listen to the space between sounds around you. Right here, in this very ordinary moment, is everything you've been chasing dressed in plain clothes. There is no grand finale, no secret key, no golden gate that suddenly opens. There is only the simple recognition that life is not coming, it is happening. The search is not leading you to life. Life is leading you to itself right now. The mind resists this. It whispers, but there must be more. Surely it can't be this simple. And yet, the simplicity is precisely the part we overlook. Think about children for a moment. They can find wonder in the shape of a cloud, in the way a puddle ripples, in the taste of something sweet. They aren't searching for meaning. They are living it. The play itself is the point. Somewhere along the way, we traded that wonder for the endless weight of becoming. Forgetting that the joy of life was never in the finish line, but in the dance we were already a part of. So what if you allowed yourself, just for today, to drop the search? What if you let go of the pressure to find, to achieve, to prove, and simply noticed what is here? Notice how the air feels on your skin. Notice the way your heart beats without asking for your permission. Notice the miracle of being aware at all. The fact that you can see, hear, feel, think. What if that was already enough? What if the very thing you've been running toward has been whispering inside you this whole time, waiting for you to finally stop and listen? This truth may sting at first. It dismantles the grand story of a life that is always not yet enough. But in its place, it offers something deeper, the chance to live fully now. The search is already over, not because you failed, but because you were never missing anything to begin with. The treasure was buried in the seeker all along. We spend most of our lives convinced that the happiness we seek is somewhere just out of reach. It's almost as if society wires us this way from the very beginning. When we're children, we're told that once we grow up, then we'll understand, then we'll have freedom, then life will begin. As teenagers, we're told that once we finish school, then we'll be ready for real life. As young adults, we're convinced that once we get a stable job, once we earn enough money, once we find a partner, then we'll finally feel secure, loved, and whole. And when those milestones come, for a fleeting moment, there's a sense of satisfaction. But it dissolves quickly like mist in the morning sun. What happens then? A new horizon appears, and we start chasing again, telling ourselves the same story, only with new characters and settings. We whisper, maybe once I buy a house, maybe once I start a family, maybe once I gain recognition in my career, maybe once I travel, maybe once I retire. Then I'll be free. This cycle never ends because the very premise is flawed. The promise that something outside of us will permanently solve the yearning inside is an illusion. Consider how people chase wealth. There are countless stories of individuals who, after years of struggle, finally achieve financial success. They buy the luxury car, the big house, the lifestyle they always dreamed of, but soon after, they discover the shine fades. The joy that once seemed permanent becomes just another baseline, and the heart begins to whisper for more. The car isn't new anymore, the house feels too quiet, the lifestyle that once thrilled becomes routine. So, the mind creates new goals. Perhaps if I double my net worth, perhaps if I expand my influence, perhaps if I become known and admired by more people, then finally it will be enough. But it never is. And it's not just about wealth. It happens with relationships, with achievements, with fame, even with spiritual practices. No matter what we chase, when the excitement of the chase is over, there's a hollow space that greets us. That hollowness is life's way of showing us that we've been running in circles, mistaking the journey for the destination, when, in truth, there was never a destination to reach. Alan Watts compared this search to music. Music isn't played to get to the end of the song. If that were true, we would simply play the final note and call it finished. Music is played because of the dance, the flow, the unfolding of sound in time. In the same way, life is not about reaching the last moment of success or achievement, because there is no final note that will suddenly grant us eternal satisfaction. Life is lived now, in each unfolding moment, and to chase an imagined point of completion is to miss the melody we're already part of. The illusion of the search keeps us running like a hamster on a wheel, exerting energy but never arriving, because there is nowhere else to arrive but here. Now imagine the futility of this endless search through a simple metaphor. A man dreams of reaching a beautiful oasis in the desert. He spends his days trudging through the sand, his eyes locked on the horizon, his heart filled with longing. Every day he tells himself, just a little further, just a little more effort, and I will arrive. Yet with each step, the horizon moves forward, never closer, always beyond. This is how we live. The oasis is never reached, because it was never there to begin with. The thirst he feels is not quenched by distance, but by noticing the waters he carries within. We are that man. Our oasis is an illusion created by the belief that something outside will quench the longing inside. We exhaust ourselves in the desert of endless becoming, while forgetting to look at what already is. The tragedy is that the culture we live in reinforces this illusion. Advertisements, media, and even well-meaning people around us constantly suggest that we are not enough yet. They promise that if we buy this product, adopt this lifestyle, pursue this goal, then our lives will finally feel complete. The economy thrives on this dissatisfaction, the perpetual promise that happiness is just around the corner. It is no wonder we believe the lie so easily. And yet, deep inside, when the lights are out and we're left alone with our thoughts, we feel the quiet ache of something missing. Not missing because it isn't here, but missing because we've been too distracted to notice it. The endless search is the veil that blinds us from the truth already resting in our hands. And this leads us into the second point, the one that shifts everything once it's seen clearly. What we seek is not only close to us, it is us. The love we crave, the peace we yearn for, the sense of belonging we chase, they are not commodities hidden in the world waiting for us to unlock them like prizes. They are qualities already alive within our very being. Yet, like the man wandering the forest with water strapped to his back, we forget to look inward. Imagine the irony of someone desperate for light, searching everywhere for the sun, while holding a lantern in their own hand. The darkness is not because light is absent. It's because the person refuses to notice what they already carry. Our suffering is not due to the absence of fulfillment, but to our refusal to acknowledge it within. Think of love, for example. People spend lifetimes searching for someone to complete them, someone to finally reflect back the affection they hunger for. And while connection and companionship are beautiful, the truth is that no partner, no matter how wonderful, can make you feel loved if you do not already recognize the love within yourself. This is why people can be adored by thousands, even worshipped by millions, and still feel painfully empty. It's not that love isn't reaching them, it's that they don't believe they are already worthy of it. They keep looking outside, forgetting that love begins within, radiating outward. To find love without first knowing it within is like trying to see the reflection of a sun that has not yet risen. Or consider peace. People meditate, travel to spiritual retreats, seek out gurus, hoping that somewhere out there lies the secret to stillness. And yet, peace is not something created by special techniques or exotic locations. Peace is the natural state that appears when we stop waging war against the present moment. The waves of the mind may rise and fall, but beneath them lies the ocean of silence that has never moved. To realize this is to see that peace was never absent. It was simply hidden under the noise of our resistance. It is like searching for the blue sky while staring only at the passing clouds. The sky has never disappeared, we simply forgot to look beyond the temporary. Freedom, too, is not a gift waiting to be granted by circumstances. We think freedom will arrive when we have enough money, when our schedule is clear, when our obligations are gone. But freedom is not about removing conditions. It is about recognizing that within every moment, no matter the external circumstances, we have the freedom to choose how we see, how we respond, how we live. A person in chains who knows this truth can be freer than someone surrounded by luxury who remains trapped in their own mind. The freedom we seek is not conditional. It is inherent in awareness itself. Every breath is freedom manifest, yet we dismiss it, waiting for something bigger, brighter, grander, all the while missing the miracle of this breath, this step, this heartbeat. The most profound shift comes when we stop seeing life as something we must acquire and begin to see it as something we already are. You don't need to search for consciousness. You are consciousness. You don't need to strive for belonging. You are already part of existence itself. You don't need to hunt for worth. The fact that you are alive is worth beyond measure. This is what Watts pointed to when he said the search itself is the problem. As long as we keep believing that fulfillment is elsewhere, we will never see the treasure hidden in plain sight. It's not about becoming more, it's about noticing what has always been here. Imagine for a moment that you stop searching. Just pause. Drop the chase for tomorrow. Let go of the hope that the next thing will fix it. What happens in that silence? At first, there might be fear. The mind doesn't like to let go of its story. But as the silence deepens, something else emerges. A sense of presence, of enoughness, of simple being. You realize that the love you were waiting for is the same love that makes your heart beat. The peace you sought is the same peace that exists in the gap between thoughts. The freedom you long for is the same freedom you feel when you breathe deeply and know you are alive. In that moment, the search dissolves, not because you found something new, but because you recognized what was already yours. And that recognition changes everything. You no longer walk through life like a beggar pleading for scraps of happiness. You walk as someone who knows they are the source. You engage with relationships not to be completed, but to share the completeness already within you. You pursue goals not to fix a hole, but to express the fullness of life flowing through you. You experience joy not as a fleeting prize, but as the natural fragrance of simply being aware. The endless search collapses, and in its place is the quiet power of presence. You realize you were never thirsty after all. You simply needed to taste the water you carried all along. There is a reason why so many people resist this truth when they first encounter it. To realize that the search is already over means that the responsibility no longer rests on the world outside to provide us with happiness. Suddenly it shifts inward. And that is an uncomfortable place to look, because it exposes the excuses we've been holding on to for so long. We tell ourselves we would finally feel whole if only the right partner arrived, if only the right job opened up, if only the right circumstances lined up perfectly. These beliefs provide a kind of comfort because they place the solution outside of us, in some future moment that hasn't yet arrived. But when we are confronted with the possibility that the solution has been here all along, within us, then the excuses fall apart. We can no longer say it's because of what hasn't happened yet. We can no longer say we're incomplete because something is missing outside. Instead, we're faced with the daunting truth that we have been overlooking the completeness already here. And that is difficult. Because if the treasure has been within us all this time, then it means our suffering has been self-imposed. It means we've been asleep in a room filled with gold, dreaming that we were poor. This is why people often resist stillness. To sit quietly, without distraction, is terrifying for many. Because in silence, there is no goal to chase, no excuse to cling to, nothing left to blame. It is simply you with yourself. And in that moment, the truth rises up that the discomfort you feel is not because life is lacking, but because you have not yet come to terms with the fullness of who you are. We fear that silence because it strips away the illusion. It is easier to remain busy, to keep chasing, to keep telling ourselves that meaning will come later. That way, we never have to face the fact that the later we are waiting for will never arrive. Life is only ever here, but there is also a liberation hidden in that recognition. Yes, it may sting to realize that the excuses are gone, but once the sting fades, what remains is a vast freedom. If happiness doesn't depend on conditions, then nothing can take it from you. If love is already within you, then you're not at the mercy of whether others provide it. If peace is always present beneath the noise, then no chaos can destroy it. The difficulty lies in acceptance, but the gift lies in the freedom that follows. The greatest act of courage is to stop waiting for life to give you permission and instead begin to live from the truth that you already have everything you need. This courage is rare because most people prefer the familiar comfort of the search. But those who dare to accept this truth find a kind of richness that can't be bought, a kind of security that no circumstance can shake. Now, let us move deeper into what it means to live in this recognition, because That is where the heart of the fourth point lies. Life is not something waiting for you in the distance. Life is not hiding behind your goals, your achievements, or your future plans. Life is happening right now, in this moment, in the very act of reading these words, in the sensation of your breath, in the beating of your heart, in the awareness of being. The tragedy is that we often miss it because our minds are so fixated on what is to come. We tell ourselves that the real living will begin when we finally arrive at some future point. But that future point never comes because life doesn't exist in the future. It only exists now. The future is always a thought, a projection, a dream. The only reality we ever experience is this moment unfolding, yet we treat it as if it's just a stepping stone on the way to something better. Think about how many times you've said, "I'll be happy when." And then notice how, when that moment arrived, it didn't satisfy in the way you thought it would. You got the job, but then new challenges arose. You entered the relationship, but then old insecurities resurfaced. You achieved the goal, but then another goal appeared. Life has a way of constantly moving, and if we tether our happiness to a moving target, we will always feel one step behind. The truth is that the fullness of life is never found in the when. It is only found in the now. Every moment is complete in itself, not because it gives us everything we want, but because it is life happening, and that in itself is extraordinary. The breath moving in and out of your body is extraordinary. The ability to perceive, to feel, to experience at all is extraordinary. Yet we dismiss it because we're so busy staring ahead, waiting for the next moment to redeem the present one. But no moment is ever redeemed by another. Each moment stands whole on its own, a jewel in the endless stream of existence. Children understand this better than we do. Watch a child at play. They are not thinking, "Once I finish this game, then I'll feel fulfilled." The play is the fulfillment. They are not waiting for something later. They are immersed in what is happening. A puddle becomes an ocean, a stick becomes a sword, a cardboard box becomes a spaceship. Their joy is not postponed, it is alive in the present. Somewhere along the way, as we grow older, we lose this natural intimacy with the moment. We start to measure our lives by achievements, by milestones, by timelines. We begin to see the present as a means to an end rather than as the end itself. And in doing so, we disconnect from the wonder that is already here. To live as though life is elsewhere is to miss life altogether. Think of it like music again. If you were listening to a symphony, but your mind was only focused on the final note, you would miss the beauty of the entire composition. Life is the same. If you are only focused on arriving at the end, at some imagined point of completion, you miss the richness of the journey unfolding now. The laughter of a friend, the warmth of sunlight on your face, the taste of a meal, the sound of rain. All of these are life expressing itself in the present. They are not obstacles to some greater moment. They are the great moment itself. When we stop postponing our joy to the future, we begin to see the sacredness of the ordinary. The cup of tea in your hand becomes enough. The breath moving through your lungs becomes enough. Not because you settle for less, but because you finally realize that life has always been enough. This does not mean we abandon our goals or stop dreaming. It simply means we stop believing that our happiness depends on them. We can still move toward our visions, still grow, still create, but we do it from a place of fullness, not from a place of lack. The journey itself becomes meaningful, not because it promises something later, but because it is alive now. The mountain climber may strive toward the summit, but the beauty of the climb is not only at the peak, it is in every step, every view, every breath of cold air along the way. When we understand this, we stop postponing life until conditions are perfect. We begin to see that life is always happening right here, regardless of conditions. And that recognition frees us from the endless waiting, the endless hoping, the endless illusion that something more is needed before we can truly live. There is a certain intensity that arises when you live in this way. The present moment begins to glow with a kind of depth that was invisible before. You taste food more fully, you listen to others more deeply, you see the world with clearer eyes, because you're no longer rushing past it to get somewhere else. You allow yourself to be here. And in that allowing, life reveals its richness. It is like realizing you've been running through a garden, blind to the flowers around you, always chasing the gate at the end. But when you stop and look, you see that the garden itself was the treasure all along. Each flower is unique, each color vibrant, each scent alive, and you wonder how you could have missed it for so long. This is the gift of recognizing that life is now. It opens your eyes to what has been here the entire time. And so, the difficulty of acceptance and the beauty of presence are deeply intertwined. To face the truth that excuses no longer serve us is to open ourselves to the reality that life is already complete. To stop waiting for the future is to awaken to the fullness of the present. Together, these realizations dismantle the illusion of the search and reveal the simplicity of being. It is not always easy, because the mind will resist, but once seen, this truth cannot be unseen. And from that moment on, life ceases to be a chase and becomes a dance with this moment, a dance with what is, a dance with the mystery of being alive right now. To realize that the treasure was always in the seeker is perhaps the most profound awakening a human being can experience. We spend so much time projecting the source of our fulfillment outward, believing that some external circumstance will finally bring the peace we long for, that when the realization dawns that what we've been seeking is our very own being, it can feel like both a shock and a homecoming. The seeker and the sought were never separate. The very energy that drives us to search is the same energy that contains the answer. The hunger for love is itself proof that love is already alive within. The longing for freedom is itself freedom speaking through us. The ache for belonging is the echo of the truth that we already belong. And once we see this clearly, we stop running and begin to notice the miracle of what we already are. Think of it this way: if you hold a diamond in your hand, but believe it's a stone, you might spend your life searching the world for jewels, never realizing that you've been carrying one all along. You might suffer, envy others who seem to have what you lack, and exhaust yourself in the pursuit of what is already yours. Only when you pause and look closely at what you carry do you realize that the search was unnecessary. You were never lacking the jewel, you were lacking the recognition. And this is the essence of life. We are diamonds pretending to be stones, searching for light we already radiate, begging for worth we already embody. The tragedy is not that we don't have what we want, but that we refuse to see it within ourselves. This realization doesn't mean life suddenly becomes easy. Challenges remain, difficulties still arise, pain is still part of the human story. But what changes is the foundation. You no longer see yourself as empty and in need of completion. You see yourself as whole, meeting life's experiences from a place of fullness rather than from a place of lack. When sorrow comes, it does not mean you are broken. When joy arrives, it is not proof that you are fixed. Both are waves moving across the ocean of being, and the ocean is already vast, already complete, already holding it all. To live from this recognition is to discover a stability that no storm can shake, because the storm belongs to the ocean, not the other way around. One of the most beautiful implications of this truth is how it transforms relationships. When you no longer see others as the source of your worth, you stop clinging to them with desperation. Instead, you begin to share love from a place of abundance rather than from a place of need. Relationships become expressions of joy rather than contracts of survival. You are no longer trying to extract from others the things you believe you lack. You begin to give not as a sacrifice, but as a natural overflow of what you already know yourself to be. Love ceases to be a transaction and becomes a gift, and that gift deepens every bond because it is unconditional. This does not mean you accept unhealthy situations. It means you no longer stay because of fear of emptiness. You stay when love flows freely, and you walk away when it does not, because you know that you are not incomplete without the other. You are whole with or without them. This shift also changes the way we see success. For most people, success is defined as finally acquiring the things that will make them feel valuable. But when the treasure is seen within, success transforms into expression rather than acquisition. You pursue dreams, not because you need them to prove your worth, but because you are overflowing with creativity, passion, and life. The artist paints not to become someone, but because they already are someone who cannot help but create. The entrepreneur builds not to fill a void, but to share the abundance of vision within. The teacher speaks not to find meaning, but to express the meaning already alive in their heart. Success stops being about climbing ladders and starts being about dancing on the ground you already stand on. The treasure was never at the top. It was in the climber all along. And then there is freedom. Once you realize that the treasure is the seeker, external conditions lose their grip on your sense of liberation. You may still pursue financial security, personal growth, or new experiences, but you know that your freedom is not waiting at the end of those pursuits. It is alive in every breath, in the simple recognition that you are aware, that you exist, that you are here. Even in moments of struggle, even in times of uncertainty, that freedom cannot be taken. It is the freedom of knowing that your being itself is the treasure. You are not defined by circumstances, not imprisoned by the stories of the mind, not reduced to the roles society assigns. You are the awareness in which all of those rise and fall. An awareness cannot be captured, cannot be diminished, cannot be broken. That is the treasure, and it has always been here. But perhaps the most striking part of this realization is how ordinary it feels once it lands. People imagine enlightenment as a grand event, a burst of fireworks, a cosmic revelation. Yet more often it is simple, quiet, even ordinary. It is the realization that the thing you were searching for is no further away than your own breath. It is in the way the sunlight spills through a window. It is in the warmth of a smile. It is in the stillness between two thoughts. The treasure was never hidden in some distant, exotic place. It was hidden in plain sight in the seeker themselves. And when you finally see it, you laugh at the simplicity, you weep at the beauty, and you marvel at how you could have missed it for so long. The treasure being the seeker also explains why no external achievement ever satisfied. It was never meant to. The achievements were mirrors pointing you back to yourself, reflecting what was already true. You didn't feel joy when you achieved the goal, because the goal gave you joy. You felt joy because for a brief moment the mind stopped searching and you tasted the stillness within. You didn't feel love when someone embraced you because they gave you love. You felt it because the embrace reminded you of the love already alive inside. Every external experience has always been a pointer, not the source. The source was always you. The treasure was always the seeker. When this truth becomes lived rather than just understood intellectually, everything changes. You stop chasing shadows and start embracing substance. You stop seeking permission from life to exist fully and begin to live with the freedom of someone who knows they already belong. Gratitude arises naturally because you see the richness that was always here. Joy becomes less fragile because it no longer depends on circumstances. Even sorrow becomes sacred because it flows through a being that knows it is vast enough to hold it. The search ends not because you found something new, but because you recognized yourself as the very thing you longed for. And from that recognition, life ceases to be a desperate hunt and becomes a celebration of what already is. And so, my friend, we come to the place where the words must soften and the silence must begin to speak for itself. You've seen how the endless search was never leading you anywhere, but in circles, how the love, the peace, the freedom you longed for were never missing, but waiting quietly inside you. You've seen that the hardest step is not the next achievement, not the next milestone, but the courage to accept that you already carry what you seek. And you've seen that life is not a destination postponed into the future, but a melody playing right now in the ordinary rhythms of your breath, your senses, your presence. What remains then is the invitation, not to chase, not to postpone, not to wait for life to finally begin, but to notice that it is already here, unfolding moment by moment. You are not a seeker who must wander forever. You are the treasure itself, aware, alive, complete. And when that truth settles into your bones, every step, every smile, every tear, every heartbeat becomes part of the dance of being. You stop searching and start living. You stop running and start arriving again and again in the only place you've ever truly been. This present moment, which has always been enough.